Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Season 3 of the Audiobook Club with John York, a podcast celebrating every aspect of audiobook production and the surrounding industry. The Audiobook Club is sponsored by Amplify Audiobooks by Pro Audio Voices. To hear more about the phenomenal movements Amplify Audiobooks is making for independent authors in the audiobook space, you can find a direct link in the bio of this episode, as well as a short but informative advertisement within this interview. Let's start the show. Welcome to the Audiobook Club. In this week's episode, we're so lucky to be joined by audiobook narrator and voice actor Aaron Smith. Aaron, it's so lovely to have you join us on the show. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much for having me on. Absolutely pleased to be here.
Oh, thank you. We're very pleased to have you. I keep saying we. I do that a lot. It's just me, but I am pleased to have you here. So as is tradition on the show, I'd love to start by asking how you first found yourself in the world of storytelling, audiobooks and voiceover.
So try to keep it fairly brief. But like the vast majority of narrators out there, we've enjoyed books. I mean, you can't do narrating without enjoying books. And I remember that my love of books really started when I started reading a book and listening to the audiobook at the same time. The act of listening to it being performed shifted the way that I naturally read books, so that now when I'm casually reading a story, I'm narrating it in my head the way I would with an audiobook. But I've reading books, enjoying that side of things for a long time. I got into playing D&D with some people at work about a decade ago, and from that I loved the storytelling side of it, so I became a forever DM. I was constantly trying to run every story, play every NPC I possibly could. And while I was playing a session of D&D, someone made a comment to me. It's like, man, I could listen to you talk all day. You should do audiobooks. So sure enough, I Googled how to become an audiobook narrator. And that's when I found acx.com, which, while Amazon isn't the best opportunity for audiobooks out there, was a great way for me to get started, because no prior experience required. Just get up there and audition. So I did. I started doing it, and what I tell a lot of people is that in the early days, before I really got involved in it, I tried to impress a young lady by reading to her every night to help her fall asleep. And it worked, and I absolutely fell in love with the idea of reading to people. Unfortunately, the reading helped her fall asleep, didn't help any progression in any sort of relationship there. But since then, I just loved reading to people. And it's that aspect of that, knowing that others are going to be listening to me, that has fueled me since then.
Yeah, that is such an interesting way to. So did you find like your sort of like love of performance then, just literally through performing? Like you started it and thought, hang on a sec, this is great.
Absolutely. So my experience, my previous career goals and whatnot, vastly different. I went to university to study aerospace engineering because I wanted to make a plane. That was my dream. I wanted to make a plane. While I was there, found that I couldn't afford to continue going to university, so I needed some other option. So I dropped out and did a study at home game design degree. So I got involved in game design and realized that I really enjoyed the creative side of game design, and that scratched the itch to create a plane. So I was like, okay, so this makes sense. And then while working as a game designer, I learned that I loved the story. I became a narrative game designer, and it all just fed towards realizing I enjoy crafting the world and the performance that I get.
Yeah. That is so interesting. And that you mentioned, like, with the, obviously your love of story has always been there. And it's weird how everything sort of meshes together, doesn't it? And you kind of think all of these elements of things that I enjoy, and then they've sort of fed into this craft. Um, when you were first starting out, when you were narrating those early books way back in the day, once you started, what would you say was like the biggest challenge that you found yourself having to overcome?
My first couple books, I would say my first book, the biggest challenge I had was that I kept making the mistake of not saving my files at different increments. So I would record and then edit that file and send it off, and then I'd get pickups and realize, hang on, trying to mix it into the edited version isn't working very well. So I don't have the raw version anymore, so I have to re-record it. I think I re-recorded that first book like 4 times before I realized I can just save separate files and keep the raw on hand. But it was, I would say, the biggest challenge was just getting the equipment necessary to take on those bigger and those better opportunities. My first microphone was a 35-pound simple condenser mic that came as a full kit, and I can't listen back to that first project now because I realized that I did such a terrible job. Um, but it was just project after project, and then okay, I'll replace this next thing.
Yeah.
I'll do this, and slowly but surely, finally getting to the stage where I I have a sound treated space. I have a microphone that I feel confident is going to last me for a while. So it was just getting that equipment at first.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the thing about the saving the files, I mean, that's a problem that you would never have been able to foresee. I mean, that takes like having to make it. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
Mhm.
that's not a foreseen problem. I always think like, the production side of this gig of creating audiobooks, it's like unlike any other. I mean, even other voiceover work, it's so unique. Like, did that come kind of natural to you, like, the production side of things, the post production, or was that a big sort of learning curve? Like, how were you before that with your understanding of like post production
Oh,
and
I'm not very good at all, and still to this day, I don't think my editing skills are good enough. I do a good enough job for the job, but eventually I hope to just be able to outsource all of my mastering to someone else to be able to do it. Um, but me doing it has been out of necessity, so I
Mm.
haven't been able to take on any anyone else to do my editing. I haven't been able to outsource it, so I need to learn how to do it. What do I need to learn? Okay, at first it was with Audacity. There are some straightforward guides online of how to hit the ACX standards for that, and so at first I just did that, and then I learned there's a few tricks and tweaks you can make to that to actually make it sound good for your voice. And
Mm.
so it's just been on the spot learning.
Yeah.
I still don't think I'm very good. I don't enjoy the editing side of things. I now use Studio One and RX, and it is much easier than using Audacity
Yeah.
and much better quality. But yeah, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, much prefer the performance side.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one all the way. So I first came across you and your work via TikTok, which has really like boomed as a platform for narrators to share their work. I just wondered what made you make the decision to start documenting your journey, as it were, like on TikTok.
So I've tried other social media and other online situations. I tried setting up a Facebook page, and I didn't like how much management Facebook needed me to do to keep it going. I did try out Twitch for a while. I would. live stream myself on Twitch reading, but I could only read public domain books, which meant it was uh, not as exciting as my audiobook narration stuff. Um, but I found I was getting a lot of anxiety off of how Twitch is designed for you to have a regular schedule to make sure that you are live at the same time every day and people can rely on you. And I just couldn't, like, I couldn't do that. So I saw TikTok, I was scrolling through it myself, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to start out small and simple. So as of right now, my TikTok is mostly, in my mind, just my digital portfolio. If someone wants to see my work, they can go to my TikTok. I may go live regularly, but that's not, I'm not doing it to gain the followers or anything like that. It's just a collection of my works, and it's helping my social anxiety a lot because I don't view it as trying to get as many followers as possible. It's just my portfolio.
Yeah, I agree. When performing live, you mentioned Twitch there, that you tried it on there, and then obviously with TikTok lives and things. Like, how do you kind of feel with like live streaming your narration work? Like, I mean, like in the sense of like performance wise, because I can only speak for myself. I've tried it recently. I only hit 1,000 followers on TikTok like quite recently, and I went and read a little bit of a public domain book just to sort of test it out, and I got so sort of anxious about like, how do I look in this frame, like really silly stuff, like how am I sounding, are the comments saying things that are nasty, and like I just got like so in my head that I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, and I see like Paige Reisenfeld, he's like amazing. She like live streams every single day with the narrating, and Ali Shay's like another one. Like, how are you like just like totally cool with it and just get in the zone and are able to block it out, or was that a process or?
So I get the same way. I really do. Um, I can't look at the comment section while while I'm working because A, I'll get distracted and flub over what I'm working on, and B, it'll cause me to stress too much about it. I have had live sessions where there've been a lot of trolls jumping in to leave comments, and I just it, when I looked at it and when I would read them, it would just affect me too much, and I'd find that I can't go live for a couple days because I was too afraid. But there's been a few people like Celtic Blue to You who has been supportive. She jumps on regularly enough that she showed me how to make her a moderator for me, and so she gets rid of all those nasty comments for me, and I just focus on the narration.
Yeah.
At the end of a chapter, I will then scroll through and kind of say, "Hey, how's everything going?" But I try not to think about the live too much.
Yeah, I think that's wise. Does it like feed that love of performing? Because like, you mentioned loving reading to people and like loving that there's an audience there, and obviously the whole like benefit of like a live audience is it's live reading. It's reading for people on the spot. Does that like do you get like a kick out of that? Does that feed that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly, I enjoy moments where I get to go into a character. So not all narrators do character voices. Not all audiobooks need character voices. I enjoy doing them myself. And so I enjoy shifting from narration to narration to a different character, and that aspect of the performance. And I always enjoy when I see little comments that are, "I can't believe you were able to just switch like that," and "Oh, your range is incredible." And it's always hilarious when I get to see people react to some of the voices that I get to do.
Yeah.
Like, I have a fairly deep voice, but when I switch to do a female voice and I'm talking a lot more high pitched, then people are shocked that it's me. So
Yeah.
it's always nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like would you recommend other narrators get on board with TikTok if they're not already? Like, because I read mostly on like Facebook, although I must admit I do try and avoid Facebook groups like the plague at this point. But like you see like people say no, TikTok's the place to be, and then other people say no, it's not. It's it's just full of dancing teenage girls or whatever. And I just kind of, and obviously like each to their own. I just kind of wondered like where you were on that fence. Do you see it as a tool that it can really be business wise about getting your name out there, making contacts, networking? Do you see it as like a force for good, all in all?
I see it as a powerful tool that can be used for good or used for bad. It's all down to how you want to use it. People complain that all they see on TikTok is dancing girls. If you just swipe past them quick enough, TikTok will stop showing you those dancing girls. I found it wasn't long after I started focusing on book talk accounts that all I see is just authors and books and things in my my TikTok account. I would highly recommend it, if nothing more than a good opportunity to show off lots of samples. So we have websites, we have digital portfolios and things that we can send out, and I haven't updated my website samples in a long time because it's a chore to do that. But I can just record a quick video of a new voice or a new sample on TikTok, and there it is. It's uploaded. It's ready to go. And I've seen a lot of success for me from TikTok. So my best-selling audiobooks by far have to be the Levanthria series, written by A.P. Beswick. Fantastic dark fantasy series. I was scrolling through TikTok, saw one of his videos, thought that was a really cool video and an intriguing premise to a story, and I looked at some of the comments, and one of them was, "Hey, have you thought about making an audiobook of this?" And he responded to that comment with, "People have been asking, I don't know where to start." So I immediately email him saying, I know where to start. I'd love to show you and help you learn the process of creating an audiobook in return for an opportunity to audition to narrate your book for you.
Oh, that's a great thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked. He listened to the sample that I provided him. He absolutely loved it. We went straight in for the first one, and I think it sold like 20,000 copies, the audiobook alone. And so from that, I've done now, I think 5 books for him. I've got one more in progress now, another one that's coming in soon from him. We've just recently, because of my love of D&D, we did a one-shot D&D session in his book world that I ran as the DM, with him as one of the players and a few other fans of the series in as the other players. And he enjoyed it. We enjoyed it enough that we've produced it into a more official looking PDF, and that's going to go live on Kickstarter soon for people to acquire. And so from me scrolling TikTok and messaging an author saying I can help you, I got a lot of success. Now, that being said, I don't want narrators to take from this that you should just scroll through TikTok and message every author saying, "Hey, would you like a narrator?" Because no, that's not good. An author would much rather know that you have some interest in their story before you pitch them, you in particular. So when I did it for A.P. Beswick, I made sure that I let him know that I am 100% comfortable if he would rather go with a different voice, because my voice isn't perfect for every story. It's good for the ones that I do, but other narrators are better for other kinds of stories. So feel free, please, to look at other ones. I just want to help you get that audiobook out. And thankfully, he did pick me.
But I mean, like, what a lesson for you, like, being proactive about it, though, because a lot of people have just ignored it or not even, like, looked. But I suppose that if you were interested in the content anyway, it was. But that was a really like, I mean, as a business standpoint, and also just from like a nice thing to do, a great thing to reach out and say like, I'll help you with this process, and not like expect anything of it. Just like hear me out. I think that's really cool. In terms of like engaging with, we talked about engaging with authors there. In terms of engaging with fellow narrators and voice actors, like how important is it to you, or is it important at all to engage in the community of fellow voice talent? Is that something that you think about often, of like, how do I make narrator friends, or that kind of thing?
Yeah, I do. I have the mindset that if you're only doing your thing in isolation, you are going to make everything that you do bigger and better. Um, but you're also going to amplify all of your mistakes as well. If you're doing it completely in isolation, if you do it without engaging with other narrators, the only review process you have is the actual audiobook reviews, which aren't a great source of critique for us. So engaging with other narrators, listening to their works, and hearing the kinds of things that they do and they get up to, really helps me to realize, oh, maybe I should not do that. Maybe I should amplify this a little bit more. And so I think you grow better when you can engage with other people.
Yeah, definitely. Are you based in the UK? I'm guessing you're based in the
I
UK.
am for right now, yes. So I'm just outside of Birmingham.
Okay,
I am engaged to a young lady from Utah in America,
cool.
and
Love Utah.
uh, it's a great place. Absolutely love it myself. Our plan is for us to get married in February, and so in 2 weeks from recording day today, I have my interview with the US Embassy in London to get my final visa to be able to move out there. So as of right now, I am Birmingham, UK based,
Yeah.
but pretty soon I will be Utah based.
That's amazing. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, that's insane. I won't go into how jealous I am of you moving out there right now. I'll save that for another time. But that sounds amazing. The reason why I asked that was just because, and to be fair, I'm not quite sure Utah specifically, but I know that obviously in the States there are a lot of in-person events, meetups. You have APAC and all the other One Voice and all the other conventions and such, that people get to go and you get to meet people in person and go watch events live and things like that. And it seems like there's just a lot happening in the States in terms of networking and community. And in the UK, it's a little bit different. I have found in my own experience. You may get just like a small little meetup with like 5 people in a pub, or like if there is going to be a meetup, it's going to be in London, and obviously that's not accessible for a fair amount of people with the current state of the everything else. We won't go into that, but you get my point. I just kind of wondered if you. I mean, is that something on your radar, going to in-person events? Is that something that you have done? Is that something that you want to do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. Maybe it's just not marketed enough in the UK, but I don't hear about events until it's too late for me to plan to go and attend them in the UK. I recently went with AP Beswick, the author of the Levanthria series I was just mentioning. He decided he was going to do his first book signing event at his local library, and so I went with him to support him for that. So I wasn't going as a narrator. I wasn't there to show off my abilities. I actually had used my leathercraft skills to craft him about 150 bookmarks out of leather to give to him so that he could use those at the book signing event.
Nice.
But it was great fun to be in that setting and that scenario, and then after the event hang out with the author and a few other authors that turned up, and to talk
Yeah.
about the things in person rather than online. But there's just very little. here in the
Yeah.
UK. I recently went to a Comic-Con and saw a couple authors at there. Thought, okay, that's cool. It's not a book event, but they're still going out there. I recently went to Spiel, the board gaming convention in Germany. There was an author that had set up a booth there. Um, but again, it wasn't a book-related event. It was for something else. In the US, I'm constantly hearing about these events that are being held and being planned. And so as soon as I had a rough idea of when I was moving, I decided, okay, I'm going to every event since then. So I'm already signed up for Books and Beaches in August in Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm going to just sign up for absolutely every opportunity I can to go to these events because I know that they're going to be fun.
Yeah.
There just aren't many in the UK.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be so much fun, man. I'm very much like I feel. I mean, I don't want to moan too much because I did have the chance to go to APAC, and I've been to the States a fair bit over the last year, and have had a chance to meet up with people and fellow narrators and organize little nights out. It was such like a special occasion when I was going to it, and they're like, oh no, we do this like once a month. Like, there's 30 of us, we all hang out and talk about funny stories and stuff. And I don't know about you, but like, I mean, I live in a small village anyway, which is great for sound, but not so much for company. And like, I just live with my partner, and when they're out at work during the day, it's just me and my little booth, and it's quite an isolated job as it is. And then with the only kind of communication being over Zoom, being over email, I'm finding myself, especially after COVID as well, I'm finding myself just like really sort of gnawing at the idea of trying to get out there and try and do something in real life for a change.
Hmm. No, exactly. I was I was actually living by myself for a couple of years prior to COVID, and for that very reason that it was just so lonely and there wasn't anything to go and do. I had to move back in with family and be
Yeah,
around family while I'm getting ready to move to the US. But I'm the same. It's so quiet. It's too quiet all the
yeah,
time. And so when I go live, I know that if I go live at a reasonable time for the UK, I'm going to get no views.
mm,
But if I go live at a time that works for the US, then I'll get a fair number of people coming in. So that means Saturday mornings are just out the window for me to go live. It has to be late in the evening for me to be able to do anything.
yeah. Yeah, I get that all too well. Just going back to more production side, not production side, sorry, performance side. When creating character voices, we've mentioned voices. You mentioned your love of doing it on lives, and of course, using TikTok to share those voices. But when creating those voices, like especially for like fantasy, and the books that require those big and the fun voices really that are not too common perhaps in our own world, where do those sort of come from for you? Like, are you a person who like banks voices in their head? Are you in a coffee shop somewhere doing voices on your phone to remember for later? Like, where does that process sort of begin for you?
Uh, so for me, it comes from other sources. I get a lot of inspirations for voices, and then I try them out and twist them. So my go-to voices are heavily influenced by the narration I listened to my favorite book series is the Belgariad by David Eddings, and it was that book that I was reading and listening to, narrated by Cameron Byerly, and the voices he did have stuck with me. Just in my head constantly. And so when I know that I have a character that needs to be a old wizened grandfather-like character, I immediately go back to, okay, what did Belgarath the Sorcerer sound like? And I'll start there, and then I'll twist it for the setting and what's needed. Or there's a big, burly giant of a character. Okay, so Barak, the warrior of Belar, I'll use his voice, and it goes from there. So for new voices, it's often movies, TV shows, that sort of thing, I will often ask an author to see if there are any actors or characters that they want a character to sound like from TV. And I had one book that a book series that the author loved the way the Dragon Ball Z characters sounded. So I spent weeks and weeks just listening to clips of various Dragon Ball Z characters and trying to duplicate and do impressions of them. And then got down to picking, okay, these voices are going to be like this, and then this is going to be Vegeta, and then this is going to be Krillin, and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like when for like pre-production for getting these, are you? I mean, I'm guessing like you'll sort of have an idea of what you're going to do for each character before production has even started. Like, could you tell us a little bit more about your pre-production, about the research? Maybe you mentioned also reaching out to authors and asking that. I'm just really interested in your process for ahead of going into the booth and recording, because I think with pre-production, it's so unique to it's so unique to each separate narrator, because there's a million ways to do it, and some like to be a little bit more loose, some like to be incredibly hemmed in and know exactly to the T of of everything that they're going to be doing in that session. Where do you sort of see yourself on that line?
I would say I'm kind of in the middle of things, and unless a book has a lot of characters, I generally won't record specific line samples to go back to regularly. But if there is a lot of them, then I will. I'll go through, pick out a couple lines for that character, record it, keep that saved so that while I'm narrating, I can remind myself, oh, what did this character sound like? Click, it plays, and go back. But that's only if there's a lot of characters that I have to deal with. I prefer the ones that have just a few main characters to narrate, and for those I tend to just keep an idea in my head and just go off of the flow. For those, not too much preparation goes into the character voices, but I take the character descriptions that are given, whether they're given by the author or they're just in the book. I will keep those to one side. Maybe I need to go back and double check. Oh, this character is supposed to be more jovial sounding. Okay, so I'll tweak that a little bit. And then with when it comes time for actual recording, I try my best to just do it in one go. I don't like going back and having to fill in a character's voice in a particular way. So I try to just do a chapter at a time with the character in running through the head repeatedly as much as I can. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It certainly does. It certainly does. I feel like I'm very similar actually. When we talk about genres, of course, we were talking, with research, we'd mentioned fantasy being, can be needing a lot more prep. When it says about genres, is there a genre of book that you perhaps maybe haven't narrated so much of that you wish to in the future?
Horror.
Okay.
So I love horror as a genre. In fact, after this interview, I'm going to the movies to go and watch a horror movie.
Nice.
I've always enjoyed it, particularly because it's the only genre that I think pulls you in a little too much almost. So you step out of watching an Avengers movie and you think, oh, that was cool. You don't feel like a superhero. You step out of a horror movie and you're looking over your shoulder. You're looking through the doorways to make sure you're not being followed, and it leaves that little lasting feeling on you. And I enjoy that. I enjoy how much it affects and has an effect on me.
Yeah.
So I enjoy reading good horror stories, but I've only had a few opportunities to narrate a couple horrors, and most of those were unreliable narrator books, which, as an idea, being a narrator, narrating a unreliable narrator story, I at first thought that I was misunderstanding the story, that I had missed plot holes and things that, well, that didn't make sense. But no, it was supposed to not make sense.
Yeah.
But I'd love to go back and go into more actual scary stories. It requires less characters. Maybe the villain has to have a very particular voice. The main characters tend to be more standard, not too distinct. But it's the way that you can make the narration feel that I really enjoy, but I
Yeah.
haven't had an opportunity to do.
Do you reckon? I don't know what your recording setup's like, but if it's quite isolated, maybe quite dark, do you reckon there is a chance that you may scare yourself?
I hope not, but it could probably happen. Yeah.
I think
Thankfully, I have my booth. My booth is a blanket fort, essentially, and the blankets are white on the inside, so it's well lit in there. I'm good.
or you've been hugged by a ghost. um, I would like to ask you, if it's okay, my most complained about question from our guest, which is it was an unfair one to spring one up. So you're under no obligation to answer it, because I do get that it can sound a little irrelevant at the start. But what is a question that you wished you were asked more?
Well, that's really difficult, you know.
Yeah.
What do I wish I was asked to do more? Are you available? Because that's the one thing that I would say I struggle with a lot, is portraying the fact that I have availability to work. Right now, I still have a day job as a game designer because I don't put myself out there enough to be able to secure enough work to do narration full time. I've done over 200 audiobooks, and still it's part-time work for me. So I wish I had more opportunities to be prompted to say, well, actually, yeah, I do have availability, you know. Like, for example, as of right now, I have nothing lined up for the new year, which would be a good thing to have. Once I move and get married, it would be nice to have projects lined up.
Do you think that there is like a, I don't know, I don't know how to best word it, but like, do you think there is like a stigma, especially in like our hustle culture, which is so, prevalent, or at least I feel anyway, this idea of like everything has to be going amazing, you have to be grinding all the time, and everything has to be, otherwise you're not trying hard enough, or whatever that means. Do you feel like there is something there which actually makes it quite difficult to say, actually, I really need some like work now? And like, because you want to, obviously, like, we all want to be we want to be making the videos, and we want to be, writing on Instagram that like, oh yeah, I'm one of the best narrators in town. I've got work forever, and like, good luck trying to book me in, But like, obviously, the reality of that is never, is not that. So, I don't know. Do you think there is a stigma there, or is that just my own insecurity?
I don't know if there's a stigma, but I will say that I don't think we voice how much of a session and a gig lifestyle this really is, going session to session, project to project, because I see narrators out there talking about all the projects they're doing, and it just looks like these are people that have it all sorted and together. They're lined up for the next year or more. So maybe it's a stigma that I'm putting on myself, that I feel like I'm not doing enough to be able to get that work. I don't think it's anything anyone else has ever said. I don't feel like any narrator has ever said you need to be working or you're not good enough. But we should probably be more comfortable with letting people know our availability, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's just, it's something that I've struggled with myself, because I started narrating in 2017, and I was always really lucky to have at least sort of like 3 to 4 months at least of projects. And then this year, when, like I feel like I'm doing the best work that I've ever done, and working on projects that I really enjoy. And this year was like the first time, and it sort of hit me. I was like, hang on a sec, I have no idea what I'm going to do in 3 weeks' time, and this is like my full time. Yeah, I've got rent to pay. I've got like plans that require that require money, and like it just sort of like hit me. I was like, I haven't like I don't really talk about this with anybody, and like that whole like scarcity like mindset sort of really came in, and it was really fearful, and it sort of like, to be honest, it sort of knocked the wind out of my sails a little bit. And then I realized that I haven't, I mean, I've spoken to 60, 70 narrators who are all going through similar things, presumably on this show, and I've never really spoken about it. I
Yeah,
just thought it was weird.
I think it's a difficult situation for us to be in, that narration isn't cheap. We recognize that. It's not as as ridiculously expensive as you can see some videos on TikTok where people are saying, "Oh, you can make 13,000 off of it." No, you can't. But it's not cheap when the majority of the people, the authors on TikTok, or the people that we get work from, are also indie authors that don't have much of a budget themselves. And so it's hard to know that you should charge an amount that you are worth, but then also know that that deadline is coming up where I have no work, and the constant feeling of, oh, should I drop my price a little bit to make it more available? Maybe I'll get more work out that way. But you have to remind yourself that no, my abilities, my equipment, everything is worth a certain price, and I should get that. But it's very difficult, especially, as you say, things are getting more expensive for everyone. Buying audiobooks, I think, are still on the rise, even though things are difficult. But being able to pay out front for the cost of an audiobook is a big challenge for a lot of authors, and we have to face that.
Yeah. Well, I think just the pure risk, isn't it, of whether it's going to sell, whether they're going to make anything back, and that the budget to take those risks seems to be getting slimmer and slimmer, unfortunately, for everybody, across the whole production board. Are you good at taking time off?
I probably not as much as I should. When I get a project, I charge through that project, and considering I still have a 9 to 5 job, that means that in those weeks that I have work, I have a project to do. It is day job and then immediately recording in the evening, and that's my entire day. And so I tend to crunch everything in a bit too much, but I try to make sure that my weekends, I don't do narration on the weekends, even though it's a part-time gig at the moment. I try to make sure that my weekends are free so that I can dedicate time to relax, to cool down, and spend time with family, because that charges me up.
Yeah, it is so necessary, isn't it? I'm exactly the same. I try not to work at all on weekends. I just think it's so needed, because it's so heavy on the head, his narration. And I don't know much about game design, unfortunately, but I imagine that's no walk in the park either.
Yeah. I would say that depending on the project, you might need to take more relaxing time with your narration. I did an 18-hour finished project that was a Western story. The entire narration, which is something like 30 hours worth of actual work, is me talking with a Southern Texas accent the entire time. And I had to stop myself a few times from continuing to speak Texan with a Western accent while I'm not narrating. I had to switch the brain off, and so you need to take those breaks.
That's really funny. They just continue on for the rest of
Yep.
time. Just now, I guess that's the new me now. So on those weekends, on those times where you're not working, I know you do post a little bit on TikTok about, and you mentioned as well making the bookmarks, about some hobbies that you have. What can we often find you up to when you're not in the booth and when you're not working?
So if I'm not playing a board game, which I absolutely love board games, I would much rather play a board game than like watch TV or a movie or something. Um, if I'm not playing a board game, I am working on leathercraft. I've only just started, just a couple months ago, that I got into it. I saw leather armor online and thought, oh, that would look so cool. My fiance and I talked about going to a Ren fair, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to make myself something for a Ren fair, just a little something small. Some van braces for my forearms and some greaves for my shins. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so I'm now planning to make an entire Dragon Hunter Knight leather armor set.
Nice.
Um, it's one of those activities that I can switch off doing, and
Yeah.
that's really nice to be able to do.
What goes into it? Like, what are the sort of like machinery needed? Is it like sewing machines? Like, how does it?
So I do everything by hand. There are some machines that are all fan. You can see some people with like CNC machines that will cut out the pattern for you on leather. No, I just buy a bunch of leather from the local craft store. I print out the pattern on paper. I'm then holding it down while I trace around it. I cut it out by hand. I'm using uh, hand punches, presses, tools, and hammers to be able to tool in the design,
Yeah.
dyeing it all, and then riveting everything together all by hand. It would probably be easier if I managed to get some of the fancy tools. But it's that creativity that I still enjoy with everything else. I enjoyed the creativity of video games. I enjoy the creativity of the books. I'm absolutely loving being creative with leather.
Yeah. That is so cool.
Mhm.
That is so cool. I was always like partial to, do you know, like, is it like, like blacksmithing?
Mhm.
Like, make, with metal and make, and like iron and all things like that. I was quite partial to, after you see a few videos of like forgery and things, and you kind of think, I'd love to make a sword, like that.
Yeah.
I just haven't, like, I don't trust myself around the heat. I think,
Yeah.
truthfully.
Well, my fiance and I have seen a bunch of really nice board gaming tables
Yeah.
and decided, you know what? Let's give it a try and make one ourselves. So I've started work on leathercraft. Maybe in a couple months I'll realize that I really enjoy woodworking as well, and all of a sudden I'm adding woodworking to my repertoire. Um, but it's
You,
just fun.
by the time you head over to Utah, you're gonna be making everything from scratch.
Self-sustaining.
Absolutely. If you remembering this is an audiobook podcast, I'm going to ask you another question about audiobooks. So that's okay. If you could share a helpful tip or just some advice with someone who is looking at pursuing audiobook narration as a career down the line, maybe just dipping their toe, maybe just just feeling the space out, what would it be?
My advice, I've given this advice to a couple people. It is uh, start now with public domain stuff. You don't need an author's permission. You don't need to audition for it. Get started, grab one of the classics and record yourself reading and put it up on YouTube or something. If if nothing else, it can work as a the starting of a portfolio. It can get you involved with learning what it actually involves in
Mm-hmm.
an audiobook, and you can discover whether or not you enjoy it enough. Um, I really value the time I spent doing Twitch, where I read things like Dracula and Frankenstein and these classical stories that people already know, and I can do it for free. There's no license fee there. And it was very valuable for me to learn the process of improving. If you want to get involved in audiobook narration, you need to understand that it's not just reading. And that's something that actually producing a public domain audiobook will teach you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Where's the best place for people to keep up with you?
For me, it's TikTok. It is absolutely TikTok. So at aaronsmith.narrator. I think my profile name is actually Aaron's Wordsmithy. But on TikTok is the best place to keep up with me and contact me. If anyone wants to, they absolutely can contact me via TikTok.
Fantastic. I would love to end the show by simply asking, what's in the pipeline? I know you've got a lot coming on, so maybe a bit of a difficult question to answer, but have you got any projects or, other things that you're excited about?
Yeah, so right now I have two projects that I'm doing duet with some female narrators that I met on TikTok. So there is another opportunity where hanging out on TikTok, I was approached by the authors on both of these cases as being told that they were told by their female narrators that they want to work with me.
Oh, amazing.
And so that was a huge compliment that other narrators wanted to be able to work with me. So I've got those two romance novels that are duets that are going to be done before the end of the year. And I've just now picked up two more, which is the second book in a epic fantasy series. The first book was An Inheritance of Ash and Blood by Jamie Edmondson. And it is a typical high epic fantasy sword and sorcery story. And then also the latest book by A.P. Beswick, who is this is the urban fantasy series, which is Spirit Beasts, which is set in his hometown, and everyone has their own spirit beast, and how it all unfolds. So that's what I'm working on right now for audiobooks. In terms of things that are exciting, I'm hoping to get a visa and work and move to America, and get married at the end of February. We've set a date as February 29th, just because it's leap year, we might as well.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping that throughout the entirety of 2024, I get opportunities to go to as many book signing events as I possibly can, as both a person to sit at a table. Books and Beaches in Oregon in August, I will be doing that. And as a fan, I want to go and see this room full of authors so that I can just enjoy all of their books.
Sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good to me, definitely. Well, that just brings us to a close for this episode of the Audiobook Club. All of the links to Aaron's social media accounts and website will be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, another huge thank you to you, Aaron, for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to have been here. It was a lot of fun.
Frustrated by the royalty rates for your audiobook? Annoyed that when the digital distributors say 70% royalties, they actually mean 70% of 50% or 80% of 70%, neither of which is an actual 70%. Wishing there was a way to cut out the middleman? Yet, you want your audiobook listeners to have a smooth and positive experience, and a direct download sale from your website won't deliver that. We at Pro Audio Voices hear you. Out of our commitment to our author clients, we've created Amplify, a program that provides an actual 65% of the sales price that you set, that gives you access to your customers' names and emails so you can reconnect with them, and keeps you in the driver's seat. Check it out at proaudiovoices.com. You'll find Amplify in the marketing menu.